Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session. We are delighted to have you join us as part of this learning journey. As early years educator, we know how important it is to keep learning, reflecting, and growing. And today's session supports exactly that. Without further ado, I'm pleased to invite our very first presenter for the day and my dear colleague, Ms. Indumathi from TIPS Erode IB campus. She'll be talking about solo taxonomy under the head curriculum and planning, and she'll explain us how this framework helps us plan learning experiences that support deeper understanding right from the early years. Indu ma'am, over to you to take us forward with the session.
Thank you, Shantini. Yeah. Happy morning, everyone. So thank you for joining the session. The session is about solo taxonomy. So this is our session's objective. At the end of the session, you'll be able to identify the 5 levels of solo taxonomy and recognize how children naturally demonstrate solo levels across domains, apply solo taxonomy to design any activity with differentiated success criteria, and use solo visual tools to support children's self-reflection and teacher feedback. So now let's make our session interactive. Now look at the slide. A question has been posted. What is shadow? Now a link will be put in the chat box. I kindly request you to click on that link. That is a Mentimeter link. You can click on that link and type in your responses and give submit. You can even scan the QR code that is displayed on the slide, or you can use the code which is displayed here on the slide. Participants, you can click on the Mentimeter link given in the chat box, or you can scan the QR code that is displayed on the slide and kindly type in your response. What is shadow? There is no right or wrong answer. Just type whatever comes to your mind and then give submit. Yeah, see few responses coming in, teacher. Others, please go ahead and type in your response and give submit. What is shadow? What is shadow? Okay, thank you so much for all your responses. Now let me share the Mentimeter screen. So we can look at these responses. Reflection, reflection, shadow is a reflection of an object or something. A shadow, sorry. And shadow is the dark shape formed when an object blocks the light. Okay. So now
We also have few responses from the chat box. It comes when there is light, it is a reflection, it's a dark reflection, a well known thing.
Okay. Thank you, teachers. Thank you so much for all your responses. Now, let us take a close look at all these responses. What do you think? Is all the response or the same? No. We gave different response. Do you think that all the responses are correct? Yes. So the interesting thing here is we all answered the same question, what is shadow? But the responses are not the same. They are different. But also we can say none of the answer is wrong. So what it means? Same question, different responses. At the same time, none of the response is wrong. So what it shows? Yes. Here we are just showing the different levels of thinking. So this is exactly what happens with our children in our early years classroom every single day. When we ask something, when we discuss something, or when we do any activity, the learners respond differently. And none is wrong or right here. It is just they are thinking at the different levels. So, how can we understand these different levels of thinking? And here comes the solo taxonomy. So, solo taxonomy, it's a framework designed by John Biggs and Kevin Collis. Solo stands for structure of observed learning outcomes. So, we are giving a structure to the observed learning outcomes. We can look at whether the learning is disconnected, whether the learning is developing in children, whether the learning is integrated or extended. So simply we can say that we can understand we can understand how deeply a child has learned something. So instead of just checking if a child knows a concept, we observe how well they understand it. And eventually it supports our planning, differentiation, assessments, and other student agency. And it helps us to make the learners move from surface learning to deep learning and then to the conceptual extension. And yes, solo shows that learning is a progression. And to understand these different levels of thinking, we have 5 levels of solo. So these are the 5 levels of solo. Now let's look at these levels one by one. And as we go through these levels, I kindly request you, I just wanted you to think of your own children in your classrooms. So we start with the base, that is the pre-structural level. Then it moves to the unistructural level, and then the multistructural, and then comes the relational, and then the extended abstract. So what is pre-structural level? At pre-structural level, the child is not having understanding of any topic, of the particular topic. So here the learning is missing. The learner has no relevant idea of the topic. And what the children shows, the learner shows, they show confusion. They give us irrelevant responses and they cannot recall or they cannot identify, they cannot connect to the task. So that is the pre-structural level. And then comes the unistructural level. So what is unistructural? Here, the learner understands one relevant idea. Children can state one correct idea, that is, they have the basic understanding or the partial understanding with one basic idea. They can identify one item, they can recall one detail at this level. And then we move to the multistructural. So here, the learner knows several relevant ideas. They can list multiple factors, they can give several, recall many details, but still those are not connected. And then we move to the relational level. At relational level, the learners can connect all those multiple ideas or the details into a meaningful whole and make sense. Children or the learner can understand how the ideas fit together, and they can explain the relationship. They can compare. Here at this stage level of thinking, they can compare, they can explain why. They show the cause and effect, and they make the connections. And then comes the extended abstract. Here, the learner transfers his understanding, or he applies his knowledge to a new situation. He thinks beyond the task. He creates his own idea. So these are the 5 levels of solo. If we see the base, from the base, the pre-structural, unistructural, multistructural is where the surface learning happens, and in relational and extended abstract where the deep learning happens. In short, if we say the pre-structural is like I don't know, unistructural is I know one thing, and multistructural is like the child is like I know many things, and relational is I can connect the ideas, and extended abstract I can apply my knowledge in a new situation. So let us understand it better with an KG example. So this is an example. What are living things? So imagine this is the question we are putting to our children, and these are some sample response of our KG learner. First, toys, or they may say, I don't know. So it means the learner is giving irrelevant response, or still he didn't understand the concept. So that shows he is in the pre-structural level of thinking. And next, next response is dog. So here he can name one living thing. So that comes in the unistructural level of thinking. And then we move to if they say people, animals, birds, here the learner can list many living things. So that comes under the multistructural level of thinking. And if we look at the next response, living things grow and need food and water. So here in this response, we can understand that the learner is able to explain what is living thing and what else they need to live. So we can understand that the learner is in the relational level of thinking. And then the extended abstract. Plants are living things because they grow, but chair is not living because it doesn't grow or need water. So now the child gains the knowledge of what are the living things. He applies this knowledge to find out a new object, whether it is a living or non-living. That is, he is applying to find out another new object. So that becomes the extended abstract. Okay, now I think we are clear with the solo levels. Yeah. Now, where does this solo happen in our early years? Solo, it is not something new. Solo is already happening in all our daily classes. Children naturally exhibit these solo levels during our daily learning routines. During the construction corner, inquiry, circle time, math, and literacy. So, how do they exhibit? Let us take an example of the construction corner. For example, the child randomly plays with the blocks without any purpose. That shows the pre-structural. Now, if he starts talking the blocks and says, this is a tower or this is tall. So here he gets one idea. So he is in the unistructural level of thinking. Now, if he starts adding the multiple features to that tower, like we can say he adds the door to it, he adds the window, he builds a compound wall. So he is adding multiple features. He is listing multiple things. So it's multi-structural level. And if the if he can say the relationship, why he have built that compound wall, why he needs a door, then that becomes the relational. And extended abstract, it is like what if someone enters my home, I can build another home near my home so my friend stays there. So here transfer of knowledge is happening. So this is how it happens in that's just an example. And if you look at the middle picture, that is during the inquiry. If you look at this picture, the learner is sorting the vehicles into three modes of transport. So how it happens here, all the solo levels. So initially, the pre-structural level, the learner may randomly names the vehicles. And if the learner identify one mode of transport, then that comes under the unistructural level. If the learner is able to sort the three modes of transport, then that becomes the multistructural. And if when moving to the relational, if the child is able to explain why a particular vehicle belongs to that particular mode of transport, then that becomes the relational level of thinking happening in that particular learner. And what about the extended abstract? Yes, he applies his knowledge to a new situation. For example, I want to move to another country for a vacation, but there is no road. So, how can I go? I can go on by flight. And during this inquiry, we get an answer from a child. I will create my own vehicle. In my car, I will have wings so that I won't get stuck in the traffic signals. So here he imagines, he creates his own design. He applies his knowledge into a different situation. So that becomes the extended abstract. And yes, the circle time. Of course, it is during the circle time we often listens to lot of different responses from our learners. So by using these, we can identify they are belonging to which level of thinking our children are with. So here is an classroom sample. So please have a close look at this picture. First picture, that is the pink ORT card. I want you to identify where it belongs to in the solo level. So please read that card. I think it's visible. So let me read. The first picture, dog likes to play. And next is dog likes to walk, Floppy likes to walk, and then is Floppy likes to sleep, and then is Floppy likes to run, and the last picture, Floppy hates this. This particular learner, when he was reading this ORT card, he asked me, why auntie this Floppy is sad only in the last image? I asked him, why do you think so? He just take a look for a minute and said, yes, I got it. First picture, he likes to do that, so he is having a smiling face. Second picture, he likes to do that, so he is here also a smiling face. And the next one he likes to do, so that is he is having a smiling face. And the last, he hates this, so his face looks sad. So, can you just tell me which level of thinking is exhibited from his response? It's relational level. because he could able to relate the emotions with the words or the meaning of that words. So it belongs to the relational level of thinking. Now look at the second picture. Here, the learner sorts the different multiple shapes. So now can you identify which level of thinking does this learner belongs to? And it belongs to the multi-structural level of thinking because the learner can able to sort the multiple shapes. And if the same learner is able to explain why the shape belongs to this category, able to explain the sorting, then it becomes the relational level. Okay. Now I think we are clear with the different solo levels and able to identify which level does each level of thinking of the children belongs to. Now, how do we make this visible? Because we cannot see the thinking directly, but we can see it through the actions, languages, and only through the responses. So how do we understand it? Here, for this we can have the solo verbs. Solo verbs helps us name those actions clearly. So now let us look at this table. Yeah, solo levels how learners think, but the solo verbs describe what learners do to show that thinking. And each solo level has its own type of thinking, and each type of thinking needs the different action words, that is the different solo verbs. Please look at this table. Pre-structural level. Here we can use notice, point, look, try, explore. Unistructural level, identify, match, sort, name, choose, organize. And unistructural, multistructural, list, sort, describe, count, group. And relational, explain, compare, connect, reason, justify, relate, and then the extended abstract, create, design, predict, imagine, apply, transfer. So these are the respective solo verbs we can use for the different levels of thinking that is happening in our children. So how we use these solo verbs? We can use these solo verbs for writing our success criteria. So let's see an example. Again, we are writing the same writing for the same example living things. So pre-structural, I'm exploring living things. Unistructural, I can name one living thing or I can identify one feature of living things. Multistructural, I can name many living things or I can list many characteristics of living things. Relational, I can connect characteristics to explain why something is living. And then the extended abstract, I can apply understanding to new or tricky examples. So here we can see that at different levels of solo, we use those respective solo verbs: exploring, name, identify, name, list, connect, apply. Okay, now why do we need this differentiated success criteria? Yes, we know that children in our early years classroom think differently. So why do we have this differentiated success criteria? For that, we have this differentiated success criteria, and this differentiated success criteria allow all the children to participate in activity, and also the children can experience the success at the different levels. Okay. Now let us see an example activity. Please take a close look at the example, at the pictures. Here, the activity is about sorting the living things and the non-living things. So look at the middle picture. The picture was sorted like living things, non-living things. And here the living thing, for living things, the learner has sorted bees, cow, and ball. For non-living things, shoes, plant, and then the jar. So if when I asked the learner, where do you think that a ball belong to the living things? He said yes. I asked why? Because the ball is moving. So here the learner is having one idea, basic partial understanding with one idea, that is, since the ball is moving, that belongs to the living thing. And then I asked him, when you put cow in the living things, so what does cow do? So it drinks water, it makes sound, and it eats food. So now he came up with the multiple characteristics of the living things, and now he can show them, understand the many characteristics and list them. Okay, now we can ask how these are connected. If he is able to explain why these belongs to living things and why these belongs to non-living things, then he is showing the relational level. And for the extended abstract, we can provide him with an any unfamiliar object, say for example seed, cocoon. He can apply his knowledge to identify whether that particular object, new object, is living or a non-living non-living thing. Okay. So these are the solo visual tools. So now we frame the success criteria. We understood how we can have the same activity with differentiated success criteria. And here, if you look at this slide, look at the previous slide, the question here, the differentiation happened through the questioning. That is differentiation through questioning. So we can say that simply by giving an activity, the learning doesn't grow in the earliest children. It happens only through the proper right questions. Yes. Okay. Now, children think better when the learning is seen, touched, and talked about. So that we have this solo visual tools. Solo visual tools shows their journey of thinking. So if you look at the first one, these are the solo stars. So 1 star, I know one thing. 2 stars, I know many things. And 3 stars, I can connect my ideas. And 4 stars, I can use my ideas in new ways. So for example, we can take the shapes. 1 star, I know one shape. 2 stars, I know two shapes. And 3 stars, I can compare the shapes. And 4 stars, I can create my own shape. How we can guide the children, particularly our young learners, to do this? Okay, we can gently say the child, say the child, you are here. You say one shape. Now now can you tell me some other shapes so that we can get 2 stars? Now you said many shapes. Can you compare the shapes? Can you compare the shapes, relate the shapes so that we can get 3 stars? In this way, we can support the child in doing the solo visual tools and help them to see their thinking. And next is the solo ladder. If you look at this, I'm learning. So the basic step, the first step is I'm learning, and then goes the higher order of thinking. So the first step, you are in the first step, and then you can move to the next step. If you know many things, if you tell me more about this, we can move to the next step. And this is the traffic lights. This works well for the pre-KG, KG1 children. Red, I need help. So we can ask them to color in the red color. I know some things, they can color it using the yellow, and I can explain it clearly. Okay, what is the use of using these visual tools? As I said, visual tools helps the learners to see their journey of thinking. And it also encourages the independence. It makes their thinking visible, and also the learners can see where their thinking is now and what deeper thinking looks like next. And so here is the solo learning cycle in early years. Let's have a quick recap. So first, we observe. What we do, we observe the learners identify. We use the solo verbs to frame the success criteria. And for the same success criteria, we saw one activity, and in that activity, we saw how through questioning we can support the learners move from one level of thinking to the next level. So here the next step questioning plays a very important role. The right question, the planned right next step question is very important. And then we can use this solo visual tools for the self-assessment and the reflection. And let me say, we don't need to use everything, all these things at once. We can start with one activity and one set of success criteria and one set of next step questions. And with time, slowly the solo becomes a natural part of our planning, questioning, and the observing learning. So I think we are close to the session, closing the session. The session has given you the practical tools you can confidently use in your classrooms.
Indu ma'am, we have few responses from the chat box. Planning our inquiry planner, numbers introduction.
Planning or inquiry planner. Thank you, Shankari ma'am. Like your numbers introduction. Thank you, teachers. Thank you so much. Circle time. That's great, ma'am. Strategies for introducing the sounds. Yes. So initially the learners, if they are not familiar with the sound, then that is the pre-structural. If they know some few sounds, one sound that is uni, then if they are coming up with the sounds of many letters, that is multi-structural, then if they can blend and make the words, that is relational. And then if they use their knowledge to read the new words, then that becomes the extended abstract. Yes. While introducing the new concept. Thank you, Vaishnavi ma'am. Yes, thank you, teachers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Indu ma'am, for sharing your thoughtful insights and practical strategies with us today. Your session was truly enriching and reflecting. I'm sure the participants will agree with me on this. The forum is open for any question and answers. Participants, you're free to ask your questions in the chat box, or you can turn on your mics and ask if you have any doubts. Once again, thank you all for your active participation.
Vaishnavi ma'am. Yes, it do work for the special children also, because it is not something a strategy or a task we are doing. This is just the observation that we are doing, and this to understand how their level of thinking is at. So definitely we can apply this and support the children, special help needed children. Thank you everyone for your active participation and thoughtful responses today.